We live in a world of noise. It is a constant, deafening hum that we have forgotten how to hear. Notifications ping like dopamine injections. Infinite scrolling turns our thumbs into pendulums of anxiety. We measure our worth in likes, our success in valuation caps, and our happiness in pixels that flicker and die. We build monuments to ourselves in the cloud, forgetting that clouds disperse with the slightest wind. But what happens when the screen goes black? What happens when the battery dies, the signal fades, and the digital applause stops? What happens when you are left alone in the crushing silence of your own failure? Most people never find out. They plug back in before the silence can speak. But some are forced to listen. Let me tell you the story of Jax Mercer. To understand the fall, you must understand the climb. And Jax's climb didn't start on a gentle slope. Jax wasn't born into the elite. He didn't have Ivy League connections, a trust fund safety net, or a father who played golf with senators. He grew up in the foster system of Detroit, a gray labyrinth of houses that smelled of stale cigarettes, boiled cabbage, and indifference. By the time he was 12, he had lived in 6 different homes. He learned early that attachment was a weakness. People left. Promises broke. The only things that didn't lie were machines. His escape wasn't sports. He was too small. It wasn't the streets. He was too smart. It was a battered, beige Toshiba laptop he bought from a pawn shop on 8 Mile for $40. It was missing the enter key, and the battery lasted 11 minutes. But to Jax, it was a portal. While other kids were out running from their problems, Jax was typing his way out of them. Code became his native tongue. It was logical. It was binary. It was fair. If you made a mistake, the computer didn't hit you with a belt. It didn't scream at you in a drunken rage. It just gave you an error message, a puzzle to solve. Syntax error on line 42. You fix it, and the world works again. It was the only control he ever had. Fast forward 12 years. By 24, Jax Mercer wasn't just a survivor. He was a god. He was the golden boy of Silicon Valley. He had built Echo, an AI platform designed to detect early signs of depression and suicidal tendencies in voice patterns. It analyzed micro-tremors in speech during phone calls. It was revolutionary. It was going to save lives. The world loved him. He was on the cover of Wired and Forbes. The boy who hacked happiness. The headlines read. He was speaking at conferences in Geneva, Tokyo, and Davos. He had the penthouse in San Francisco with floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the fog rolling over the Golden Gate. He had the matte black Tesla, the model girlfriend who curated her life for Instagram, and a team of 50 people who called him a visionary to his face. He stood at the top of the tower he built, holding a glass of scotch that cost more than his foster mother, made in a year. He looked out at the city lights and thought he was the architect of the future. But he didn't see the glitch, and the glitch wasn't in the code. It was in the company he kept. His co-founder was a man named Marcus. Marcus was everything Jax wasn't. Charming, polished, a salesman who could sell ice to a drowning man. Jax handled the tech. Marcus handled the world. Jax thought of him as the brother he never had. It was a Tuesday evening when the illusion shattered. Jax had stayed late to optimize the server load. The office was empty, bathed in the blue glow of monitors. He needed a file from Marcus's private drive, a harmless, shared asset. But when he accessed the folder, he found something else, a subdirectory labeled Project Chimera. Curiosity is a hacker's instinct. Jax clicked. Files flooded the screen. Spreadsheets, contracts, audio logs. Jax froze. His breath caught in his throat. These weren't analytics. These were raw recordings. Echo wasn't just detecting depression. It was recording people's deepest fears, their therapy sessions, their confessions of affairs, their financial ruins. And next to the audio files were transaction logs. Buyer, Zenith Advertising. Buyer, Global Insurance Corp. Marcus wasn't saving lives. He was selling vulnerabilities. He was leveraging the private pain of millions of users to help insurance companies deny claims and advertisers target the mentally fragile. The door to the office clicked open. Jax spun around. Marcus stood there, holding his gym bag, a smooth, practiced smile on his face. But the smile vanished when he saw the screen. "Jax," Marcus said, his voice calm, terrifyingly steady. "You shouldn't be in that folder." "You're selling them," Jax whispered, his voice trembling not with fear, but with a rage that felt like magma. "We built this to help people. You're selling their suicide notes to insurance companies?" Marcus sighed, walking over to the minibar to pour a drink. "We are building a business, Jax. Idealism is cute in the garage, but we have investors. Data is the new oil, and we are sitting on a gusher." "I'm shutting it down," Jax said. "I'm going to the board. I'm going to the press. I will burn this entire company to the ground before I let you sell one more bite of data." Marcus took a sip of his drink. He looked at Jax with pity. "You really don't understand how the world works, do you, kid? You think you're the master because you wrote the code? You're just the mechanic." "I'm going public," Jax said, reaching for his phone. "If you do that," Marcus said softly, "you won't just lose the company. You'll lose everything. I have the legal team. I have the PR firms. I have the narrative. Who are they going to believe? The charming CEO or the foster kid with a history of instability?" Jax didn't listen. He walked out. He thought the truth was a shield. He was wrong. The truth is only a shield if you can afford to hold it up. And the corporate machine is faster than the truth. Before Jax could blow the whistle, they crushed him. The collapse wasn't a slow slide. It was a free fall. The morning after Jax walked out of the office, his access cards didn't work. By noon, his company email was deactivated. By 2 p.m., the first article hit TechCrunch, but it wasn't about Marcus stealing data. The headline read, "Echo founder Jax Mercer under investigation for embezzlement and data theft." Marcus hadn't just prepared a defense, he had prepared an execution. The evidence was flawless. Digital fingerprints planted on Jax's private server. Bank transfers routed through shell accounts that looked like Jax's. The narrative was simple and devastating. The unstable genius had gone rogue, stealing user data to sell on the black market, while the heroic co-founder, Marcus, had caught him just in time. Jax watched his life disintegrate from the screen of his phone. The lawsuits hit like a swarm of locusts. Breach of contract, violation of fiduciary duty, intellectual property theft. His bank accounts were frozen, pending investigation. He remembered sitting in his lawyer's office, a glass-walled room that smelled of leather and expensive cologne. The lawyer, a man who had laughed at his jokes a week ago, now looked at him like he was a stain on the upholstery. "The settlement offer is generous, Jax," the lawyer said, sliding a paper across the mahogany desk. "Admit to negligence, sign the NDA, give up your equity, and they won't pursue criminal charges. You walk away." "I didn't do it," Jax said, his hands shaking. "It's a lie. All of it." The lawyer closed his folder. It doesn't matter what's true. It matters what they can prove. And they have a war chest of $50 million to prove you're a criminal. You have frozen accounts and a lease you can't pay. Do the math. Jax didn't sign. He fought. He spent every dollar he had hidden away, every favor he was owed. But the cancel culture mob descended like wolves. Twitter threads dissected his toxic masculinity. Old classmates from high school gave interviews saying he always seemed off. His girlfriend left on a Tuesday. No dramatic fight. No screaming. Just a suitcase by the door and a note on the granite counter. I can't handle the toxicity, Jax. I have my own brand to protect. I'm sorry. 6 weeks later, the foreclosure notice was taped to the penthouse door. Jax Mercer, the visionary, the golden boy, was erased. He landed in Queens, New York, far from the hills of San Francisco. He found a basement apartment in a building that leaned slightly to the left. It had no view, unless you counted the feet of pedestrians walking by the ground-level window. No heating. Just the rhythmic, bone-shaking rumble of the N train passing underground every 10 minutes. He applied for coding jobs. He sent out resume after resume. But his name was Poison. The HR algorithms, systems similar to the ones he helped create, flagged him instantly. High risk, liability. We went in another direction, the email said. Or simply silence, the deafening silence of a world that has decided you no longer exist. For 6 months, Jax stared at a blank wall. His savings were gone. He sold the watches. He sold the designer clothes. He was eating 1 meal a day. He needed money, fast. But he couldn't use his brain anymore. The world didn't want it. So, he used his body. He signed up for a food delivery app. Fast Feast. The irony was thick enough to choke on. The architect of the digital economy was now its lowest servant. He bought a cheap, used electric bike with a cracked frame. He bought a helmet with a heavily tinted visor. He wore it everywhere. He never took it off when he entered restaurants or apartment lobbies. He was terrified that someone would recognize him. That someone would say, "Hey, aren't you the guy who tried to sell our depression data?" He became a ghost. The work was brutal. New York in November is a cold, wet beast. Jax rode through rain that felt like needles. He navigated through traffic, dodging yellow cabs that treated him like a speed bump. He delivered sushi to the glass towers of Manhattan, the same towers where he used to attend board meetings. He would walk into the lobbies, dripping wet, holding a brown paper bag, and the security guards would look through him. He wasn't a person. He was a mechanism of delivery. One night, he delivered to a luxury condo in Tribeca. The elevator opened directly into the apartment. A party was in full swing. Music, laughter, the clinking of expensive glass. The guy who ordered the pizza was a venture capitalist Jax had met once at a TED Talk. Jax kept his head down, the visor obscuring his eyes. He handed over the boxes. "Keep the change, buddy," the VC said, tossing a crumpled $5 bill at Jax's chest without even looking at him. He turned back to his guests. "So anyway, as I was saying, the market is weeding out the weak hands." Jax stood there for a second, the bill on the floor. He wanted to scream. He wanted to rip off the helmet and shout, "I am smarter than you. I built Echo. I am not this." But he didn't. He bent down, picked up the $5, and walked back to the elevator. Because he needed the $5 to buy dinner. The humiliation was a physical weight, heavier than the delivery bag on his back. It sat on his chest, pressing the air out of his lungs. The lowest point came on a Friday night in late November. A nor'easter storm was battering the city. The wind howled through the avenues like a wounded animal. The rain was horizontal. Jax was on his 12th hour. His legs were burning. His fingers were numb inside his gloves. He had a triple order. Thai food. He was rushing to make the time window. He took a corner on 7th Avenue too fast. The bike hit an oil patch slick with rain. The world spun. Metal screeched against asphalt. Jax flew over the handlebars. He hit the ground hard, his shoulder taking the impact. He slid 10 feet across the wet road. The bike was twisted, but worse. The food. The bag had burst open. Pad Thai and curry were splattered all over the dirty, wet street. Jax lay there for a moment, staring at the gray sky, the rain washing over his visor. Pain shot through his arm. "Are you kidding me?" A voice cut through the storm. The customer was standing under the awning of the building. A kid, maybe 20, wearing a Balenciaga hoodie that cost more than Jax's bike. "That was my dinner, you idiot!" the kid screamed, stepping out into the rain just enough to film Jax with his phone. "Look at this. This loser just destroyed my food." Jax struggled to his feet. His hand was bleeding. His knee was throbbing. I'm sorry," he rasped, his voice hoarse. "I slipped. The road. I don't care about the road," the kid shouted. "I'm reporting you. You're done. Enjoy being fired, loser." The kid went back inside. The heavy glass door slammed shut. Jax stood alone in the rain. He looked at his broken bike. He looked at the ruined food mixing with the gutter water. He looked at his bleeding hand. He realized he didn't have the money to fix the bike tire. He realized he wouldn't make rent this week. He realized that the algorithm would automatically deactivate him for the failed delivery. He was done. He didn't pick up the bike. He left it there, a twisted piece of junk in the middle of a 7th Avenue. He started walking. He didn't walk home to Queens. He walked west, towards the water. He walked for 40 minutes, the adrenaline fading, replaced by a cold, dark resolve. He reached the edge of the Hudson River Park. The railing was wet and cold under his hands. Below, the black water churned. The city lights reflected on the surface, shimmering, distorted, like millions of lying eyes watching him. Jax reached into his pocket and pulled out his phone. The screen was cracked from the fall. It buzzed with a notification, an automated message from the delivery app. "Your account has been suspended pending review." He stared at the device, this black mirror, this thing that had given him everything and taken everything away. He held it over the water. His hand didn't shake. He was ready. He wasn't just going to drop the phone. He was going to follow it. The silence of the water called to him. It promised an end to the noise, an end to the struggle, an end to the shame of being Jax Mercer. He took a breath, filling his lungs with the cold, damp air. He leaned forward, but then a glitch, not in a computer, in his mind. A memory forced its way through the darkness. It wasn't a memory of his success. It wasn't the penthouse or the money. It was the smell of lavender and old paper. It was Mrs. Higgins. The rain battered Jax's face, mixing with the tears he refused to acknowledge. His hand hovered over the black water of the Hudson. The phone, his last connection to the world that had rejected him, trembled in his grip. But the memory of Mrs. Higgins didn't just flash. It bloomed. He was 10 years old again. Detroit, the foster home basement. It was smelling of mold and cheap laundry detergent. He had been crying because the other boys had smashed his keyboard. Mrs. Higgins, a woman with tired eyes and hands rough from work, sat down next to him. She didn't hug him. She knew he hated that. She just pointed at the broken plastic keys. "Jax," she had said, her voice cutting through his panic. "Look at me. Why are you crying over plastic? The computer is just a box. It's a tool. It doesn't think. It doesn't dream. You are the magic. You are the source code. Don't you ever confuse the tool with the master. If the box breaks, you build a better one. You are the source code." Jax stared at the dark water. The wind howled, sounding like the screams of his own ego dying. "I am not the box," he whispered to the river. He didn't jump. Instead, he tightened his grip on the phone. He pulled his arm back and threw the device with every ounce of rage left in his starving body. It spun through the air and splashed silently into the Hudson. The screen went black. The notification stopped. The noise died. And in the silence, Jax Mercer took his first real breath in years. He turned around and walked away from the edge. He walked 5 miles back to Queens in the freezing rain. When he got to his basement apartment, he didn't sleep. He walked into the cramped bathroom. He looked at himself in the mirror. Wet, shivering, eyes hollow, hair matted. He looked like a victim. He opened the medicine cabinet, took out a pair of rusty scissors and a razor. Chunk by chunk, he cut off the hair. He shaved it down to the skin. He watched the golden boy fall into the sink. When he washed his face and looked up again, a stranger stared back. A man with nothing. A man with absolutely nothing left to lose. And that is the most dangerous man in the world. The next morning, Jax didn't wake up at 8:10 a.m. He woke up at 4 a.m. He put on his wet sneakers. He went outside into the dark, cold, pre-dawn, and he ran. He ran not for fitness, but for exorcism. He ran until his lungs burned like fire. He ran until the physical pain was louder than the mental shame. He realized something on those dark streets. Pain is just data. It's information. It tells you that you are still alive. He didn't apply for any more tech jobs. He walked into a small, cluttered electronics repair shop in Brighton Beach. The sign said, "Nikolai's Fix-It." It smelled of soldering iron and stale coffee. Nikolai, a 70-year-old Russian engineer with hands like leather, looked at Jax. He looked at the shaved head, the intensity in the eyes. "I don't need cashier," Nikolai grunted. "I'm not a cashier," Jax said. "I'm a mechanic." Jax worked for minimum wage. He spent 12 hours a day hunched over a microscope, soldering microscopic chips on motherboards. It was humble work, precise, meditative. He fixed cracked screens for teenagers. He recovered photos from water-damaged phones for crying grandmothers. He began to see technology not as a way to control the world, but as a way to connect it. He remembered what it felt like to be human. "You are overqualified," Nikolai told him one day, watching Jax rebuild a processor with surgical speed. "You code like Mozart played piano. Why you fix trash here?" "Because," Jax said, not looking up, "I need to learn how things are put together before I can build them again. And I need to remember that the machine serves the human, not the other way around." At night, the real work began. Jax scavenged parts from the shop's recycling bin, broken servers, fried graphic cards, old laptops. He taped them together in his basement. He built a Frankenstein monster of a computer. It was ugly. It was loud. But it was powerful. He started coding. But this time, he wasn't building Echo. He wasn't building to sell data. He wasn't building for investors. He was building Sanctum. It was a decentralized network. An encrypted digital space where people could speak without algorithms tracking their pulse, where no data was stored, where you were not a product to be sold to advertisers. A digital shield. The coding was brutal. He worked on a 10-year-old keyboard. He ate rice and beans. He slept 4 hours a night. There were moments of panic, flashbacks to the lawsuits, the humiliation on the rainy street. The voice in his head whispered, "You are a delivery boy. You are a failure." But every time the voice spoke, Jax got up and did 50 push-ups until his arms failed. He turned the anxiety into fuel. He learned that rock bottom isn't a grave, it's a solid foundation. You can build a skyscraper on rock. You can't build anything on the swamp of public opinion. 8 months later, Jax launched Sanctum. No press release, no launch party, no magazine covers. He just posted a single link on a few underground forums with a simple message. If you are tired of being watched, come here. At first, silence. 10 users, 50 users. Jax kept fixing phones at Nikolai's. He kept running at 4:01 a.m. He was poor, but he was free. He had reclaimed his mind. Then, the world shifted. A massive data breach hit the major social media giants. The very companies that had destroyed Jax were exposed. Millions of private messages leaked. Trust collapsed. The world panicked. They looked for an exit. And they found Sanctum. It started as a trickle, then a flood. The user base doubled every hour. Real people, tired of being manipulated, tired of the noise, flocked to the safety Jax had built. The servers, his Frankenstein pile of trash, groaned under the weight. Jax had to route processing power through a distributed network of users. He turned the community into the server. It became unstoppable. The tech giants noticed. The sharks circled. They tried to kill it. They couldn't. It was decentralized. So, they tried to buy it. The email came from Apex Capital, the same firm that had led the smear campaign against him 2 years ago. "We would like to discuss an acquisition. $500 million, cash." Jax read the email. He was sitting in his basement, wearing a hoodie stained with solder. $500 million. Enough to buy the penthouse back. Enough to buy the city. Enough to crush everyone who had crushed him. He agreed to the meeting. He walked into the glass skyscraper in Manhattan. He wore jeans and a plain black t-shirt. He walked past the security guards who used to look through him when he delivered their sushi. He entered the boardroom. The partners sat there, men in $5,000 suits, with teeth whitened to perfection. They smiled. They stood up to shake his hand, pretending they hadn't tried to destroy his life. "Jax," the lead partner said, spreading his arms. "What a comeback story. We always knew you had it in you. We want to bring Sanctum into the fold. We can scale it, monetize it. We're talking about a unicorn valuation." They slid the contract across the marble table. Jax looked at the contract. He looked at the number. $500,000. He looked at his hands. They were scarred from soldering irons. They were calloused from gripping the handlebars of that delivery bike in the rain. They were the hands of a worker. He thought about the kid in the Balenciaga hoodie screaming at him. He thought about the cold wind on the Hudson River. He thought of Mrs. Higgins. He realized something profound. These men in suits, they were the poor ones. They were addicted to the noise. They were slaves to the number. Jax stood up. He didn't smile. "You don't get it," Jax said softly. The room went silent. "Excuse me?" The partner blinked. "You think this is a negotiation," Jax said, his voice steady as steel. "You think everything has a price tag. You think you can buy the silence because you own the noise." He picked up the contract. "I didn't build Sanctum to get rich," Jax said. "I built it to destroy the model you people live on. This isn't a product. It's a revolution." The sound of the paper tearing was louder than a gunshot in the quiet room. Jax tore the contract in half, then in quarters. He dropped the confetti onto the polished table. "It's not for sale," Jax said, "and neither am I." He turned and walked out. He left $500 million on the table. He walked out of the skyscraper into the sunlight of the New York afternoon. He took a deep breath. The air tasted sweet. Jax Mercer never appeared on a magazine cover again. He didn't buy a yacht. He kept living in a modest apartment in Queens. He continued to run Sanctum as a non-profit foundation. He started a program teaching coding to foster kids in Detroit, giving them the tools to write their own escape. He found a woman who didn't care about his valuation cap, but cared about his soul. He found peace. He realized that the rock bottom he hit wasn't the end of his life. It was the beginning of his truth. Now, look at me. Look at the screen. I don't know who you are. I don't know what kind of hell you are walking through right now. Maybe you lost your job. Maybe you lost your money. Maybe the person you loved walked out the door and didn't look back. Maybe you feel like the world is moving at 1,000,000 miles an hour, and you are stuck in the mud. You are looking at your life, and you see wreckage. You see failure. You hear the noise of everyone else's success, and you feel small. Good. Feel it. Let it burn. Because that pain, that is not the end. That is the signal. That is the universe telling you that the old you has to die so the new you can be born. The algorithm of life is not written in Python or C++. It is written in sweat. It is written in the refusal to stay down. It is written in the 4 a.m. darkness when nobody is watching. Don't let the noise distract you. Don't let the screen define you. Do not measure your worth by their metrics. You think you are buried? No. You are just planted. Jax Mercer lost everything to find the only thing that mattered: himself. He stopped trying to be the architect of the future and became the architect of his own mind. So, listen to me. Put the phone down. Turn off the notifications. Stop scrolling through the lives of people who don't care about you. Go to the mirror. Look at the person staring back. That is the only project that matters. That is the only startup that counts. You are not a user. You are the creator. You are not the content. You are the master. The screen is black. The signal is dead. Now you can finally start to live.